Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, as the case may be, or good evening, I guess. Well, uh, I guess caller today is Di Green from the UK. She has a square back up there. She's going to call a dance for us today, I think. Well, maybe not. Welcome, Di.
Thank you.
Not too many callers bring their own fan club, but that's great. We'll keep the applause down to a minimum. Okay. So, what's your real name?
My real name is Di. No, I mean it's short for Diane. Okay,
Okay. We
with
won't.
double N in Diane. Mostly Diane has one N, but my dad couldn't spell, so I have to.
Yeah. Ever run into any problems with using the name Di?
Well, no, not using Di actually. For a while I was always called Diane at school, and then that somehow changed to Di, and my mum always calls me Diane, but Um, all my siblings and everybody at work basically calls me Di now. So, and on, all of you. So it's my name. That's the one
Aha.
I go by.
Sounds good. Um, Here it comes. Whoops. I just got to let a few more people in there.
I
Invite.
had a problem once when I first started square dancing, actually, and joined the local club. And we were given, whilst we were still learning, we were given temporary badges, and they had one of these clicky machines where you stamp out something on a strip and you stick it onto something. I don't know what they're called, but basically it punches the letters onto an adhesive strip.
Yeah.
And because I just had a D and an I, and they're not really accurate, so I'd got this temporary badge with Di. And one of the members of the club came up to me. She was going round all the beginners to see who they were and say welcome. And she came up to me and peered at my badge and said, "And what's your name?" Oi, because it really did look like an O and an I. But apart from that, no problems.
Oh, that's funny. How did you get into dancing?
Well, my mum had a friend who was a square dancer at our local club, and he told mum that they were having recruiting. Did she want to try it? And it was on Monday evening, and I always went swimming with my mum on Monday evening. So she said, "Do you think I have time to go swimming and then get ready to go to this dance at 7:30?" And I said, "No, you don't. You'll not be ready. Your hair will be wet." So I said, "Well, never mind the swimming. I'll come dancing with you for a couple of weeks." So that's what we did. But of course, we never went swimming again because we just we were hooked. So
Uh,
that's how
Fantastic.
I found it. Yeah.
So, how long did it take for you to decide to take over and become a caller?
Um, Not about 18 months from when I started. I did my basic and mainstream, and I was just interested in the choreography, the mechanics of it. And there were one or two other people at the club who were interested, and the chairman was doing a little bit at the time. He was writing some singing calls, and so I thought, well, yeah, I'd like a go at that. And I used to write choreography just out of my head, just I used to do it while I was mucking out the horse and all sorts because I was just interested. So I just decided I'd have a go at it. And the caller said to me, "You don't really want to learn to call, do you?"
Gee.
you know, it's hard work, but it didn't deter me anyway.
No, I guess not. That's great. So, how did you meet Terry?
Oh, through square dancing. As you know, he's a caller, and I went learned at my local club, which is in the kind of next town from where Terry called one of the clubs, and he called lots of Saturday night dancers, and we met at dances, and then I went to his clubs, and eventually circumstances meant we got together. I knew him for about 15 years before we did, but
Oh, it took the square dancing to do it.
yeah.
How does that work? Like, there's very few of us that uh, were combination groups, so to speak. How's it work being two callers in the same household?
Well, it's good. We can bounce ideas off each other. I've learned lots of things from Terry over the years, and we share equipment. You know, we've got two lots of everything, so we've got spares. We very often call dancers together, and that works great. So it's all good, yeah. And yeah, nothing negative about it. I can't think of it. It's just all good. It works well.
Very good. So, how did you go about learning to call then?
Well, as I say, I got interested in it, and the chairman in the club at the time was doing a little bit, and he kind of introduced me to it and said, "Oh, this is how I do it." So he used to write out some singing call figures and put them with specific songs, and I did the same for a few weeks, and the caller would allow us to do a guest singing call. But he very quickly said to me, he said, if you want to learn to call, he says, you're not going to just do singing calls. So if you do want to learn to call, then let me know and we'll do something about it. So I did go up on the stage and have a guest it with him, alongside him, once a week about, and just got used to doing some sight calling. He basically said to me, you know, the way I teach is not the way that other callers would teach, just so that you know. And I said, yeah, fine. You're the only one here. I'm learning here. and and he sight called. He used modules for singing calls and said, if you want to give the dancers variety, you've got to use singing call figures. You're not going to remember that many, so write them down. And it's not an issue. You know, some people call them idiot sheets, but he said, I don't care. We have them written down and it's good. So we had a bit of both. And he was very good. He helped me, and he put on a couple of like caller training days just for me and the other chap at the club with the square from the club. And that's how I got into it and used to write some, as I say, I wrote a bit of choreography for patter calling at first. And I would go into the club really enthusiastic and say, I've written this and I want to call this in my tip today. But he was very good at kind of mentoring, and he would look at the sheet of paper. I went this A4 sheet full from top to bottom of patter calling already pre-prepared, which I'd just written off the top of my head. I didn't have any software or anything. And and this was his very early days. And he would take one look at it and say, I'll call it for you, because he could tell from looking at the first few lines that it wasn't going to work.
Oh,
But to save me the embarrassment of that or trying to sort them out, he did it, and he corrected it as he called it. So, you know, and then he would tell me why it didn't work. So he was really good. It's good.
oh, that sounds great. So, anything that has surprised you at a dance that you've called?
Well, yeah, in one of the early dances that I called, um, it was a dance after an event, and we had the whole full. It was well, small dance, but there were only 6 squares dancing. It was small hall, and there was there were more than there's more than one caller on the floor, but there was one caller in a particular square uh, who surprised me because, as I say, it was an early dance. I hadn't caught. I'm one of the very first ones, and I'd never experienced it before. But I called something that that square had difficulty with, and it was basically a spin chain through from an Alamo rink. I can remember it because it was so vivid in my imagination now, even now, all these years later. And all of the other 5 squares on the floor just danced it, and their square didn't. So he shouted out from the floor and waved his arms and said, "You can't do that. That doesn't work." And I was kind of whoa, because I was a new caller and I was thinking, okay, the other 5 squares have danced it. So I thought, well, I'll do it again. So I did it again, and all the squares got through it that time. Nothing was said. And at the very end of the dance, he came to me at the stage and he said, um, that thing that you did, that was really good choreography. Can I have a copy of it, please?
Oh,
you know, didn't say sorry for shouting you out or something, but anyway, yeah. So that really, really surprised me because I was kind of taken aback. I'd never had somebody shout from the floor before. Mm. But I got over it.
Uh, oh yeah, well, so what prompted you to move along into uh, the other programs like Advanced and Challenge?
Well, when I was calling at the local club, it was just basic, mainstream, and plus. But the caller who was mentoring me was approached by some people who were trying to start an advanced club, and he was asked if he would travel across to a town on the west coast and call for them. And I was actually at a dance with him when they approached him, and he said to them that he thought about it, but got back to them and said he would do it provided that he could take me and teach me to call.
Hmm.
Um, so they agreed to that, and that's how I learned to call advanced. Basically, he called the club where I learned to dance and then took on the advanced club, and he also had his own club in my hometown, and he was training me to take over for when he retired from calling, which is what happened in the two clubs.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
That was advanced. In the advanced club, they also had some dancers who had been dancing some C2 experienced dancers, and that kind of dwindled for various reasons. So they were still interested in doing some C1, but they didn't have anybody to call it to them then. So they kept saying, well, we want to do it, we want to do it. But it was so far away from home and I couldn't do it at the time. My circumstances were different. So eventually they said, instead of doing it on a different day of the week, they would do some C1 immediately before the club, which I was going to call anyway. And they asked, did I want to dance it with them? They were going to learn to dance from recordings. And I said, well, I will come and do it. Obviously, I can come over an hour early, but if I'm going to dance and you haven't got a caller, I might as well learn to call it. So that's why I started with C1.
Hmm. So how did you get started on calling on Zoom? Because you're a very prolific caller on Zoom.
Well, very quite early in lockdown, some of our local dancers from Nottingham, from Terry's Club, started having lockdown parties, which were just quizzes and chit chat to get together on Zoom. And and then we said, well, well, there's no reason why we couldn't do a bit of dancing on Zoom. We'd heard that Mike Dussault had done a little bit of this two couple or one couple dancing or whatever, and said, well, do you want to try it? So we had a few people who would, at the end of this lockdown party, would just try dancing, and they were advanced dancers. Um, they enjoyed it, and that's all we did, just a tip at the end of the after party and the lockdown party, until basically Joachim was chatting to me, and he said that he was going to start doing uh, Zoom calling, and he told me that Et was doing it, and did I want to share contacts and see whether anybody wanted to do it. So we did that, and it was basically advanced and challenge level because we offered plus to our clubs, and nobody was courageous enough to try it at that stage. So we didn't have any plus dancers. But later, we were asked if we would do plus. About six months later. So that's why we started doing the plus dance. And we still have people who are interested in doing all of the levels now. Even people who started back dancing, we know they feel they enjoy doing the Zoom dancing as well. And I think, as most people know, um, the dancers who've tried Zoom dancing have found out that they actually feel they are better for it when they go back to dance in the squares. But yeah, and so we carry on. And we now have for our plus dance, most of the people on the plus dance, not all of them, the majority are actually from England now. So since they went back to dancing, they now are doing the Zoom dancing as well. You know,
That's great.
but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's a different feel, you know. So I think people once you do Zoom as a dancer, it's a different sort of puzzle solving. It's
Hmm.
like I said,
Yeah.
yeah, it's different. So we all like it.
Yeah,
Um,
but even there are some people who still cannot go dancing, who don't have any dancing near close enough to them. Um, and so, it's something for them. They wouldn't get any dancing otherwise.
yeah, I'm doing some for some clubs that they don't have a permanent collar sort of a thing, and so they still want to dance, but they they really don't want to go out. So anyhow, it certainly has been a great thing for all of us. So, what are some of the embarrassing moments that have happened on the mic? I think we've all had them. Have you got any that are repeatable?
Yeah. Oh, all of them, of course. I don't want to do them again.
No.
Uh, yeah, well, I can remember one. I was calling a dance and it was going well. I was sharing the dance with somebody else, and I got to do my next tip. And I was going to use one of my favorite singing calls in this tip. So I did the patter, no problem, put the singing call on. And, at that time, I had certain, most of the singing calls I did, I knew all the lyrics to the songs. So I didn't need to look at the cue sheets to read the lyrics. And in this particular setup at the dance, the computer with the music on it wasn't near me anyway. It was over there on the table. The other caller stood between me and the computer if we were doing a duet. But I was standing on the stage and the computer was out of arm's reach. So I thought, no problem. And I was going to sing the Seekers song, A World of Our Own, which I love, and I know it. So I started the music and the dancers all squared up and I said, circle left. And I didn't know any of the words. So I just went la 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 for the whole circle left. And then I carried on with the rest of the singing call. But yeah, that was about kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
No, it was never mentioned. Nobody asked anything about it. So
Oh,
they
gee.
probably, yeah, I
Never
survived
happened.
that.
That never happened to anybody else.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
I
great way to
also,
learn improv, isn't it?
yeah. And there was once at a dance, actually a different dance, but with the same caller. And we had not had the opportunity to practice together for the singing calls, but another female caller. I I had called with her before and we were okay calling together. And we chose some music and had a little practice with it, but only just sitting at the computer like this, not through the equipment. And we stood up in this hall and did the first. I think it was for the first tip as well. And when it came to the singing call, we started the opener and tried to sing it together. And we were miles apart. She was up, I was down. We were trying to get to the same level together, and we were going. So in the end, we both looked at each other and just thought, no, we can't sing together. So we both just let one or the other do the singing and just do the choreo. That was embarrassing. That was terrible. So yeah, I don't think I've ever used that record since.
Oh, gee.
Uh,
Uh,
Survived.
so, what sort of have you called anything? How do I word this? Interesting places, like in a submarine, or I don't know. Just throwing that
Sometimes
out there.
sometimes sound like I'm in a submarine. It depends on the hole. But no, I've not called in a submarine. I've called a couple of interesting places when usually when we've had visitors from Germany, actually, and we've been visiting other clubs in Germany, and we dance anywhere and everywhere. So we've had a tip in the coal mining museum in Bochum when we've been visiting over there. We nearly got to dance in the local currywurst cafe, but just at the time we were about to clear the tables and start dancing, having asked if we could, a coachload of people came in and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't afford to turn these people away." So we had to actually go outside and dance outside on the grass. But yeah, we try to dance anywhere. And once also in Sheffield, my hometown, when our German friends came over, we had a special tour of the local town hall by the mayor, and he actually presented them with certificates for their visit. And then we did the tour and we came down the grand staircase into the foyer where the entrance is, where people were coming in and out, and stopped on the stairs there. The dancers went into the foyer and I stood on the stairs on this grand staircase and called, stood beside the mayor and called a tip to the dancers in the foyer. So that was interesting.
Hey,
Yeah.
this guy talking.
Hey, Macy.
Morley, the dog is on an interview later.
I didn't know my mic was on. Sorry.
Yeah,
Well, obviously the dog's got something to say about this. Oh my. Have you have any technical glitches at a dance? Like your turntable blowing up or whatever?
yeah, I guess most people have. An early one was calling a dance again, inexperienced with equipment. I'm not saying I'm experienced with it now, but I know my equipment. And then I turned up at this dance with my gear, and I was calling it with somebody else, and he was a fairly newish caller as well, and I didn't realize that he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And he said, "Oh, you don't need that. We'll plug it into this speaker and one into that." And away he went, plugged them all together. And then, and I started calling the first tip, did all the patter halfway through the singing call, and the amp blew up, big style, like it was a gunshot going off. And I thought somebody had actually shot a gun in the hall. It was so loud, the bang. And I was just singing, all of a sudden, boom, and all the dancers were the same. They all kind of went, so the whole thing stopped. And that was the first time I'd had a major catastrophe. But somebody else had another amp in the hall. So well, in their car, there was other callers there. So we fixed the equipment and started again. But that was interesting. So ever since that day, I've never, ever used my equipment with anybody else's unless I know exactly how it works.
Yeah.
You learn the lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to be said about how you hook things up. That's for sure.
Yeah, and now I know that. Yeah. But I've also had at the club once when it was only in the club, but we were coming towards the end of the first half of the club before the tea break, and I'd started a tip. Well, I tried to start a tip, squared them all up and they're all on the floor. And then as I pressed start on the laptop for the music, the computer said, restarting
Yeah.
and updating, and we've all had that, I'm sure. So I thought, okay. It didn't just say restarting, but it wanted to update and then it needed time. So I just said to them, okay, this is restarting, but I'll just do you one anyway. So I just did them a couple of singing calls without the music. And then they went and had a cup of tea to get over it. We're fine.
Oh, gosh. So those are some technical problems. Uh, have you have you ever had anybody die on you?
No, I haven't had that,
That's
fortunately.
good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Not in a square dance, no.
No. Okay. Well, I think we all, one time or another, we hope it's not our calling, but it will happen. Um, yeah. this is a good one. Have you, and it doesn't have to be related to square dancing necessarily, but have you ever cried with joy?
Um, yeah, I don't have one of those relating to square dancing,
That's okay.
but I have actually. Many years ago, when I had pets, I had an Alsatian, but amongst other things, and a rabbit. And each morning before I went to work, I used to put the rabbit out in the garden to run around. Well, she lived in the house anyway, but she went out for a run in the morning. And I did everything else, and then got ready to go to work. And when I went out to get her to put her back in, I couldn't find her. And I searched everywhere, couldn't find her. I sent the dog out to look for her. He kept going to this pile of wood behind the shed, which was firewood. And and I'm looking at this pile of wood, and she's not in there. She can't, it was all piled up really tight. So come on away, and he kept going to this pile of wood, and I'd been in the next door garden searching for her, in the fields, everywhere, really getting desperate. And finally, I sent the dog out again. He went down the garden, stood up looking at this pile of wood. So I said, okay, I'll take the pile of wood apart. And I found that there was some wooden guttering, from a house roof that my partner at the time had brought home and chopped up into lengths and stacked in this pile of firewood. But he got two sections of this guttering together like this. So there was this tunnel down the middle. Sure enough, the rabbit was in the middle of this pile of wood. And so finally I found her, and I just got so desperate that when I actually picked her up, I just cried with joy that I'd found her. It was totally uncontrollable.
Hmm. Yes, that's pretty good. So, what kind of hobbies do you have outside of dancing and calling?
Well, Terry and I have a tandem, so we go cycling. In fact, Robin's with us here at the moment, and I went out yesterday and took Robin out on the tandem, so, where she just screamed all the way. But I don't know why. It was safe, but anyway, yeah. So we go on the bike. We like caravanning. We go away when we can. We don't get many weekends away because we're too busy calling, but we do like to do that. And what else do we do? I like gardening. I like growing stuff, fruit, veggies, and salad things, as Morley knows, and Lee and Etna. Yeah, so I like gardening. I like growing things in the garden that we can eat. I like flowers, but I don't tend to do much with them myself. My mum's a flower person, so
I guess we should hit the categories of have you ever. So, have you ever ridden a motorcycle?
briefly for about 10 seconds.
Oh my.
That was enough. Actually, it was too big for me, and I felt really unsafe on it. I was off road, and I'd never had any desire to actually ride a bike. I was a pillion on the motorbike, plenty of years, but I'd never wanted to get on and ride it myself. And then this opportunity while we were off road was that, do you just want to try it? So I said, okay. And I don't know whether it's because it was too big for me, but I got on this bike, and I managed to pull the throttle, and it just went and so I stopped it immediately, jumped off, and went, okay, that's enough. That's it.
Uh, well, at least they didn't say don't hit the house.
We were in the middle of a field. I don't think it would let me ride it near the house.
No. Well, as soon as you say don't do it, that's where people end up. Um, Ever jump out of a plane?
I have
You have.
twice.
Yeah, twice?
Both times I had a parachute. Yeah.
Oh, that's that's a pretty good idea.
Well, the first
Oh,
one was a charity jump. It was a static jump, actually, just from 2,000 feet. And it was really over way too quickly. We had some instruction, and they said, you jump out of the plane, and then when the chute will open, and then you must reach up and get the toggles and then, guide yourself down. Well, I was enjoying it so much, so that I was watching my feet and the ground below me, and the ground was coming up, and I suddenly thought, oh my God, I'm not, where are the toggles? So I landed okay on that one, but it just didn't last long enough. And many years later, just for the hell of it, I did a tandem dive. So I haven't done a solo skydive, but I did a tandem dive from 14,000 feet. And that was spectacular because it was like looking down at a Monopoly board. And I was so far up in the air that it took a long time to come down. So the ground didn't seem to come up so soon, and you could see around you for ages. Brilliant. Except for when the instructor who was behind me, he said, well, I'll just give you a swirl around, Well, I get bad motion sickness. So we did one little swoop round, and I just said, that's enough. I mean, I felt absolutely sick as a dog for the rest of the day. But apart from that, the dive was brilliant. Yes.
Wow. That takes a lot of courage to jump out of an airplane, I think. Um,
Yeah, it's just got a little bit mad. I need to do it, maybe. That's me.
have you flown in a hot air balloon?
I have. Yeah, that was
What,
fun too.
what was the occasion?
Well, it was actually interesting. We have a kind of scheme here in supermarkets, grocery stores. When you get your shopping, you have a points card and you can collect points. So over the years, these things build up, and one year, my mum does this, and I've got one. And so she says, I've got all these points. What shall we use them for? So we had to look what we could do, and there was one of the options, hot air balloon ride. So we said, let's go and do it then. So we just booked in to do it. And the funny thing was, we tried 3 times before we actually could do it, because of course you go to the site ready to do it, and if the weather isn't right, it's a no-no. So we finally got to do this ride. Really enjoyed it. And when we landed, the guys who came along to collect the basket and the balloon and everything, we were looking at this guy and we're thinking, well, he looks familiar, and he kept looking at us, and this went on for about half an hour while he was tidying up. And in the end, I said to Mum, I don't know where we know him from. We definitely know him. And we were thinking, how can we? But because he wasn't in the area where we lived, And finally, we kind of approached each other and said, where do we know you from? And then said, are you a square dancer? So, sure enough, this guy was a square dancer, and he was volunteering to help his son, who was the guy who had the business with the balloon basket. And so it's a small world.
Yes,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Have you scuba dived?
Only a tester in a tank, in a swimming pool, a training session. I've
Mhm.
never dived outside of that. It was really just to try it and see. And it's not because I didn't like it. I just thought, not that I'd experienced it in a good place, but I just figured I would never have time to do it.
Hmm.
So it's not one of the hobbies I decided to take up.
So you've tried you test drive these little things to see what to do. Wow.
Yeah,
And the square dancing one took, didn't it? Yes.
definitely. Yeah.
Yes. Ever work in a factory?
No, I have not.
Ever pulled taffy?
No, I
No.
do know what that means. I think after you asked it someone else, and I thought, what the heck? Anyway, so I found out, but
You did
no,
okay. That's good. Yeah, it could be quite rude. I don't know.
my answer
Um,
could have been different, but yeah.
yeah. Ever serve in the armed forces?
I did in the Territorial Army when I was fresh out of school. Well, actually, still in my last years in the sixth form at school. Yeah, just for a couple of years, and then
Oh,
again, I'd got too much going on, so I couldn't do everything.
did you ever
It was
shoot
an
anyone?
experience. Oh, sorry.
Did you ever shoot anybody? I mean,
I didn't
Yes.
shoot any real people, any I didn't shoot anybody, and I didn't go, and I was not in a situation where I was actually fighting, so I didn't have to try to shoot anybody. If I
oh,
had to try to shoot anybody, I would have shot them, but I didn't. So
ah,
it was all training, but never any action,
oh yeah. So you've most likely ridden horses.
Oh yeah, yeah. I did used to have horses,
You did,
so
yep.
I've done a lot of that. Yeah, loved horses.
Have you ever survived a heartbreak?
Well, yeah, I must have. Um, I guess, you know, lost my dad, lost plenty of members of my family, lost my horses, lost my dogs. Oh, so yeah, I have lots of
Mm-hmm.
things.
Do you wish you were taller or shorter?
No,
No? Do you, well, do your feet
I
reach
just,
the floor?
yeah, depending what I'm hanging from,
Yeah.
I will.
Okay. Well, then you're tall enough.
I
Okay.
got long arms, you see, so I'm okay.
Do you play an instrument?
I dabble. I play guitar. I used to play electronic organ. Not done that for many years, but the guitar I occasionally pick it up and have a little strum just to myself.
Uh,
Sometimes did some after party things in the past, but that's not happened for a few years.
have you ever been ecstatically happy?
Um, not one thing, not one specific thing springs to mind. I must have been. I'm just ecstatically happy all the time.
That's what I was thinking you were going to say. Uh, yeah, I figured you're a cup half full, or actually full all the time type of person.
Yeah, I think that would be my philosophy.
Yeah.
You've got to be, haven't you?
Oh,
My almost overflowing, I guess. You've got to put everything into something, yeah, and you get more out of it. So,
oh yeah.
and I do appreciate that. It's just someone's personality and the character. If you are unfortunately not in that category, then it must be very difficult to change. But I'm glad to say I am. So that's good. But I have a lot of people around me who make me happy. All of you people on here, and it's been absolutely amazing meeting everybody. And but I've got more friends. Well, all my friends are in square dancing, apart from a couple of old school friends. So anytime anything to do with square dancing, calling, then yeah, that's me. Happy.
So tell us a little bit about your recordings. You've done a few recordings for
Oh,
people.
yeah, I record with Shindig Productions, and I started that back about 2014, and I did a few then, and then had a break from it, just again time and everything, and then Jeff asked if I could come back and do some, so I've been working on some more with him more recently, and that's good. I like that. It's a challenge.
That's
I got
good.
my own little recording studio at home now because Jeff is in South Africa, and obviously we don't get together. So he creates all the music, and he asks us to record our vocals, and we send them to him, and he puts them with the music tracks. Um, and to do that, I used to go into a recording studio, but now I have a little gadget at home and set up my own recording studio, so I can do that at home.
Oh, that's neat.
It's good.
Yeah, it's after the initial outlay, I guess it's yeah, cost savings. You don't have to pay for the studio.
Yes, correct. I mean, it's I've probably paid more for the equipment than I would have done for the studio for the number of songs I've done up to now,
Well,
or
so
for a
far, yeah,
few more. But it's not about that. It's a hobby really. So
yeah.
I don't. Nobody's in this for the money, are they?
Oh, Really? Gee, you can tell by my 3 by 4 foot room here. This is my recording studio.
Mhm.
I know the first time I went in, the guy uh, put it was a little DAT tape in and all. And then he says to me, he says, you want 16 or 34 channel? And I thought, uh, I want two, one for music and one for voice. I don't know if he ever got over that. What's your favorite food or drink? Well, let's start with food. Favorite food?
Sprouts. Well,
No.
Brussels sprouts.
Oh, okay.
My favorite food. I mean, broccoli comes a close second.
Holy smokes. I knew there was somebody out there.
Oh,
Good grief. Anyhow, very good. I'm glad there's someone eating that stuff.
and I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you believe that, okay. Let's get off that one. How about your favorite drink?
Um, drink. I mean, I drink a lot of water. I used to drink Diet Coke many years ago, and I fell out with that. I just, it got less and less, and then I thought, why am I drinking this? It's horrible. So I drink water mostly. This is not pink gin that I'm drinking. It's a spring water with pomegranate and pear, which is quite nice. And we've got that because we have this special evening with our friends. But if I'm going to have a drink, my favorite would be Disaronno, the Italian almond liqueur
Oh, really? How do you
over
spell?
ice.
How do you spell Zeranto?
Disaronno,
Oh,
Disarone.
okay, yeah. I recognize the name, but I don't
Disaronno.
have no idea what it's like.
Okay. Another name for it would be Amaretto.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I suppose the Disaronno is the brand name. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's sort of a licorice tasting thing.
It's the almond.
Almond, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see why that would be good. So who makes a better collar? Tall people or short people?
Nothing to do with size. I guess you could say, well, okay, depends how high the microphone is.
Okay, that's true. Oh my gosh. Got onto a different topic there entirely. Um, where's that list? I've got a whole list of them. Yeah, fat ones or skinny ones. Well, yeah, we'll let that go. Um, so how do you feel when you call at a festival or a convention when there's all, not, it's not the dancers that would make you nervous by any means, but all the different callers in the hall, and we're all critiquing. We do
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah. Well, I used to worry about that, and it would actually put me off what calling. Um, I I felt so self-conscious about calling and so nervous with other callers in the hall. And then over the years, I danced quite a lot to some callers over here, two of our callers. And one of them, they were the top callers and they were doing all the festivals and things. And we danced to them a bit. And one of them would say, he'd lose his pilot square. And so then he'd look around the room and then he'd just pick somebody he knew and he'd say, "Oh, David, I need a corner. Who's the corner?" And they would show him the corner, and then he'd carry on and resolve. And he would actually ask the dancers if he lost his pilot square, and sometimes things didn't always work, and he would just make fun of it. And I thought, well, do you know what? If he can do that, does it really matter if you don't get it right every time? So it was good to see that. And then I started I was still nervous doing it, but I've got now, so as I think some dancers, if I've mentioned this to some of the dancer friends, and And they said, well, you know what? The dancers couldn't get up there and call, and they don't care if you make a mistake. And they're quite happy if they're getting good dancing, you just get on and do it. So it kind of was reassuring. So I just now, if I do something wrong, I say, okay, my fault. I pick little things up from other callers, some of the things that they say and do. It gives you ideas for a bit of fun with the dancers if something goes wrong. But one thing I never do is try to make it look like the dancers were wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I always say it's always the caller's fault. And that's my stance. But it's made me feel less nervous. And I'm just happy to go and do it. And if I get it wrong, then I get it wrong. So now if there are callers in the hall and I'm calling, then they're there as dancers. So I don't think about, whether they're gonna like it or not. If they got something to say about it, then so be it. I don't care.
Yeah, that's good. And I know when I go to a dance, I go as a dancer.
Mhm.
I yeah, worst thing to do is ask, how am I doing? Gee, I don't know. I'm having fun, so I guess you're doing very well. Uh,
Yeah.
but you make lemonade out of lemons. And uh, so, have you any other thing? Well, let me ask you one last question, and then open up to if you want to include anything else. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
As a caller,
Mm, Yeah, I think the answer probably should be pretty similar for both as a caller and as not a caller.
oh, okay. Well,
Maybe.
I remember. I guess as a caller, um, most of the comments I get from um all my dancers is that I'm very patient, and they like that. That's of benefit to them. So I guess that's it. If I ever seen as that's the thing that's most commented upon, then I suppose I'll be remembered for being a patient one. um, and not pulling my hair out in public. Sometimes I go behind the curtains on the stage and have a little, and then I go back out. But yeah, I'm very patient, and you've got to be. You can't show the dancers that you get frustrated with them because they're there to enjoy themselves. So you've got to just run with it, haven't you? Whatever's happening on the floor, you've got to deal with it. So yeah, and not an outside of square dancing. Most people would just tell me I'm very helpful. I try to help people with things any way I can, I guess.
Do you have a remedy for baldness?
Yeah, I can help with that,
Yeah,
Joe.
jump out of a plane. I don't know. Uh,
Well, no, there's this thing called a wig. All right.
oh, I'll borrow one of yours.
Next time I have my hair cut, I'll send you the hair.
Well, somebody told me if I rub alum on my head here, it won't grow more hair, but it'll shrink my head so the hair I have will fit better. I don't know if that's any good. Uh, so, um, what do you think is the most important skill for the newer callers to develop?
I think that um, any caller should be guided towards working their craft for the dancers, not for their own enjoyment or to show off their skills. I mean, don't get me wrong, everybody wants to do something interesting and unique, but it should be achievable. Um, and I've seen things that aren't. I've seen some callers who try to be clever sometimes, um, to make themselves look clever, and the dancers don't enjoy it because it's not good dancing. So I think that the best thing that any caller can do is to always aim to make it good for the dancers. They're there to enjoy themselves, and that's why anybody goes to a dance. So I think that's what callers should always keep in mind. And newer callers could, going back, remembering when I started, there's so much to think about, so much to remember and to try to learn, that you could lose sight of that. You could be concentrating just on your own development, and not on what you're delivering to the dancers. The best skill, I think, would be to learn how to move the dancers so that they have a really nice flowing, danceable choreography, and they enjoy it and want more. That's what they need, isn't it?
Good, good.
And not so much, that's a skill they should develop. But and okay, everybody wants to resolve squares and get them home again. But when I started learning, and it's fun, my caller mentor, he said to me, just get your square on the floor. I want you to call to them and just let them dance. He said, don't worry about resolving every 5 minutes, because all the time you're thinking about resolving, you're not actually thinking about what you're calling and what they're dancing. So then it starts to become choppy and, contraflow. Just dance them. And so that's what I did right from the start. And I developed some maybe undesirable habits, such as calling very long tips occasionally. That's one of my downfalls. But basically, I did that and I danced them, and they moved and they danced. And then every so often I'd think, oh, I better resolve now. But it was good, and it did bring some things to mind that I learned from. I learned from my mistakes. But a funny thing came out of that. The caller said to me one day, okay, you go ahead and call something to this square. So I started calling, and I was calling. And finally, when I resolved, he said, did you know you could have called Alaman left 26 times in that sequence? And I went, nope, I never saw one of them, because I was not looking for it. I was just calling. So now I see it more. But yeah, I think move the dancers, let them dance, and make sure they enjoy it. That's what callers need to do.
That's good. Now you want to be very careful about how you answer the next question.
Uh-oh.
Okay, and everybody watch the screen and see the reaction. What do you think about round dancing? I hope you all saw Amy.
Round dancing is brilliant. That's another word for fantastic, if you it is. And I actually did learn to do some round dancing with Amy. I started doing a bit of round dancing when I started learning to square dance, because there were rounds between squares, and I just used to jump up on the floor and have a go, because it didn't affect anyone else. And I had done some ballroom and Latin dancing before, so I knew some of the stuff. But there were some dances I could never do, because I could never do a waltz, because I could never follow anyone. Everyone was turning all the time. But I used to love it. And what I like about it now is that if you have a partner to dance with, it's nice to dance and interact with them, and to have to stay with them and to go through the whole dance with them. I like that. And Joe, what do you like about dancing, Joe? Round dancing?
What do I like
You
about round dancing?
Yeah, you learned with Amy as well. You do.
The thing I like about round dancing is my teacher.
Yeah. Well, I concur.
Well, as a caller, I used to teach and cue round dancing back in the day when that's what callers did. Um, but now, very much, I just like to dance with my wife.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, you know, yes, and if
About
you
round
haven't,
dancing.
if you
Sorry.
haven't, just a real quick commercial here. Uh, Anytime you can go on Amy's Zoom sessions now, you'll have fun. it's again, it's people. I think everybody in this on the screen here and people who attend these sessions in the past as well are people. We're a community, we're a family, and I think that's what Di brings to this whole mix very well. So, is there anything else you want to tell us, Di, that we should know about you before we end? Because we really want to know the scoop. She's holding back something, isn't she?
No, what do you want to know about me? I think I
So-
told you everything. Oh,
So,
Ed has a hand up.
Joe, I have something for you.
Okay, good. I think we should open this up to the floor here. Go ahead, Ed.
So since this is all the mania about the coronation this weekend, tell them, Di, about how you met royalty.
Oh, well, yeah. So yes, I did. And some people might know, same as Ed does, because we did these polls on dancers and things, and it was brought up then. But I did meet our Queen. I was working on a site where we had a main attraction for a tourist attraction, and the big main attraction building was complete and was going to be officially opened by the Queen. And I was on the staff, so I met the Queen on site when she came to open the exhibition. That was amazing. She was lovely, and I had seen her years ago, but at a distance at an event. But to actually meet her close up was great. She was really small and cute, but that was many years ago, actually, 1992.
Wow.
But yeah, I really liked our Queen. It's just not the same now. I said the other day, just doesn't seem right to have a king. We've had a queen for so long, all my life. Yeah. So yeah, I have met her.
Wow. That's great. Anybody else? Amy, you must have something that you would really like to say.
Okay, I guess I'll think of something. What is your favorite chocolate?
My favorite chocolate, I think it always comes back to being Cadbury's Dairy Milk, to be quite honest. I really like Lindt, Lindor, the truffle balls, but it always comes back to Cadbury's Dairy Milk for me. It's what you're brought up with, isn't it? Really good.
Anybody else? Don, you usually have a question for our callers. No? She's told us everything there is to know. That's true.
You have a question. Oh, Susan has a question.
Oh, very good.
Please may I ask a question? What is the most unusual place that you have called?
Well, I think I've probably answered that before, Susan. When have you been asleep?
I was asleep.
Sure, chastise her. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the I think in the Bochum Coal Mining Museum is probably the most weird place. She missed it. Okay,
She missed it. She's not been paying attention, of course.
I think she's been asleep.
Yeah, what's in her glass? So, Lee, let's find out what Lee has a question to say.
Di, can you tell us how dolphins relate to dancing?
Good one, Lee. Yeah, well, on our Zoom dancers, I introduced this concept. It's just through some silly talk, really. But one day, I said to my dancers, "It's good to smile." Somebody said something about smiling, say everybody smile, and I said, "It's good. You should always smile. It's good to smile. Square dancing makes us smile, and when you smile, you're happy, and you get dolphins in your head." So there was this thing like, okay, dolphins in your head. Well, it was from when you have endorphins released in your brain. You're happy. It's happy feeling. So that was kind of the endorphins in your
Yeah.
brain, dolphins in your head. So that's how it relates to square dancing. You know, it makes us happy, so we get dolphins in our head.
I like that answer. Gee. Oh my gosh.
And like I said right at the beginning, you know what, I forgot the question you asked now, Joe, but I said, well, kind of, you've got to be a little bit mad to do that. And there you go.
Yeah, you got to be a little crazy. If you aren't, well, that's how I was told you learned how to be a caller. Is you put 7 marbles in your mouth, and this is for a week long of training. And each day that you're there for caller training, you spit 1 marble out. And by the end of the week, once you've lost all your marbles, you're a caller.
I wonder where that was going. Something to do with diction or other.
Yeah, yeah, right. All right. Well, if you haven't danced to die, you got to get on Zoom at least, or better yet, go to the UK and dance live.
Oh yeah, come over and see us.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's getting cheaper and cheaper. It's a long drive for me, but you know, it's that last 3,000 miles that kills you. When you're driving, that is. Yes.
Over the ocean. Yeah. I
Yes,
guess it was.
you got it. Oh, Eileen has her hand raised. Eileen from Australia. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I know that Don has got calls that he has invented. Have you invented any calls that we now dance to that you've been recognized for?
No, I don't, Eileen. I've never written any calls that have been formally adopted. I call lots of things actually that seem to be
Oh, where have I gone?
well, oh, you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
I'm,
Can you hear
I'm
me?
still here. I don't know what I've just done.
Oh, well, you're fine. You didn't do anything. But yeah, a lot of
Maybe-
calls.
Maybe get out of bed, Eileen.
I don't know where I've gone. Where? Oh, there you are. There, now I'm back. Can you, am I back? Yes.
Yes, you're there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I only, you know, the calls I have invented have been kind of unintentional, let's say, but lots of fun.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. Okay, well, I think that we'll probably wrap it up for today.
Actually, you know what, Joe?
Yeah.
There are some calls that I didn't invent, but which were lots of fun, and those were the calls that the dancers invented, and I just called what they were dancing, and that happens a lot as well.
You want to talk to Mickey about that? I picked up from Mickey the idea of when there's a square on the floor that's messing up, or should I say, not doing what you're calling, you refer to them as your R&D square, and you actually ask them how it's going and have they got a name for that call yet. So
Yeah.
people
So,
people
Joe,
enjoy that.
Yeah, so Joe, when I started calling, my dancers said I should make up a call called Good Grief. Because at the very beginning of calling, they wouldn't be doing what I wanted them to do. And I'd say, good grief, good grief. And then it got to be good grief. And now we could do once removed, good grief, or initially tandem, good grief. And you know, well, I gave up on that idea of making up my own call, but it would have been good grief for me, for sure.
Very good.
I
We
made
can-
up a call once, and it was actually just a fun thing at the club. And I couldn't even tell you what the call, you know, what you had to do for this call, but it was a combination of 2 things. And we called it Toodle Pip. And it was just for a bit of fun with the dancers when I was still calling with Jim, who taught me how to call. And we were standing there one day, it was in the Advanced Club. And he said, and we fixed it so that the first time we got the squares up on the floor, and after such and such a sequence, I would call Toodle Pip. And we had told one of the squares of dancers. So they were primed and they would be able to do it. And the others would just think, what the hell is a Toodle Pip? Anyway, the funny thing was it backfired on us completely, because I don't know why, whether some of the dancers had told any of the others, or there were some that knew it that were in another square. But I think what happened was they were dancing and I called Toodle Pip. And the square that we had primed did the call. The other squares must have just thought, what did she say? And turned and looked at the other square, saw what they were doing and copied them. And they just danced it and never asked a question, never said anything to us. So that was going to be a joke, and it just went gone.
Yeah.
But,
But that's the thing. The things that happen extemporaneously on the floor and the reactions we get are fantastic.
oh, Bill's got a hand up, Bill.
Oh yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, Daryl Clendenin many years ago when I was calling a festival, and was Sunday morning, diehard dancers, and he was doing something, and the dancers, some of them before, asked him, "Why don't you call what we're dancing?" I swear to you, Di, he looked at the dancers with a poker face, and he said, "I would like to call what you're dancing, but I wouldn't know what to call it."
Yeah.
I kept that line and used it for years when I was still calling.
That's good.
But I want to say I've enjoyed this, Di. It's been you said a lot of stuff that just brought back a lot of memories from personal stuff. And patience. You said about that, to be patience for the dancer. Absolutely. You got to, and it's not there. And if something happened for me, I would just say, "Oops, okay, let's try that one again." And the dancers can appreciate that, I would think, because you're not, if you don't make any mistakes, when you get boring.
Yeah, and I agree, Bill. And I've been on the floor as a dancer when callers have not been so patient, and I see the angst, I see the dancers' discomfort.
Absolutely.
And, so I don't want to be there. I learn a lot about what I want to call, how I want to call, from seeing reactions from dancers when things aren't quite right, or when they have something that's not very comfortable for them. And I try to not repeat those things. So.
And Bill, this
Oh,
is Robin.
hang on, Robin's here, Bill.
I just wanted to say, if they don't do what you tell them to do, you just marry them, right?
Oh, jeez.
Okay, that's a personal joke, I think.
Yes. Okay.
That note.
Let's find out is she available for an interview next month? Okay. Hey, next week we do have Brian Clark, and if you don't know Brian Clark, you will get to know him next week. He, as I read on Facebook, he was a mentor to Socrates and Plato. Yeah, and he's not that old. I don't get it, but anyhow, there was some fun interaction going on Facebook with Brian, so that gives an indication of Brian's sense of humor, that he has people that would pick on him that way. The more you get picked on, I think the better people like you. So, and I say that because I get picked on too. At any rate, we're going to close this off. I want to thank everybody for showing up today. This will be on YouTube in a couple of days. So if you want to show it to your non-dancing friends, maybe that'll get them to dancing. Other than that, I think that closes it off.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Joe.
Thanks, Di.
everybody.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Di.
Thank you.
Thank you, Di. You too.